My first husband died when my daughter was only 1 year old. I was left to raise her all alone, although my brother effectively stood in as her father. She had a relatively normal childhood. I was lucky that I did not have to work, and my family stepped in so much to help me raise her. Around her teenage years, she started exhibiting some worrying behavior. Lots of aggression, hostility, neuroticism, etc. She was very productive and did amazing in school, and never got involved in drugs or anything, but her personality changed to become quite cruel and intimidating. I honestly have no idea how it happened, or why this change happened with her. She refused any form of counseling or mental health treatment, convinced there was nothing wrong with her. I hate to describe it this way, but the way she treated me and my brother was hurtful. She went out of her way to make me feel bad about my weight, my looks, my lack of education, my clumsiness, etc. On a nearly daily basis, she would do things to embarrass me in public, and clearly take pleasure out of seeing me upset or ashamed. She wasn't just like this to me. She also effectively lost all of her friendships and all of her relations with other family members over her behavior. And it wasn't just teasing. If you frustrated her, she would become terrifyingly angry, and even physically and destructively. It was the most harrowing years of my life to see my own daughter turn into this cruel, horrible person. The worst part was that she would go back and forth between being kind and sweet to me and acting like she was some amazing person, and then switch into being cruel. I just bit my tongue. I literally was too scared to talk back to her. There was a time where I tried to rein it in, but eventually I just couldn't deal with it anymore. She left home at 18 and rarely visits. She lives 500 miles away in New Jersey, working towards a career in finance. When I do see her, she acts fine and friendly, but there are moments where I can see her cruel side is still very much there. I remember when she visited for a whole weekend and was totally fine. And then at the end, she threw a huge fit at me over dinner being made too late at night and started screaming at me and calling me dumb, pathetic, ugly, breaking her plate on the ground, and then laughed at me when I started to cry. Very classic behavior. It was almost like she had planned to act nice all weekend just to trick me. Anyway, you get the gist. It has been a constant source of pain for me. I met my husband 5 years ago and married him 3 years ago. My daughter has been nothing but sweet to him when they have met, so it can be difficult for him to understand why we are a bit distant. But other family members on my side have assured him that what I say is true, so it's not as if he doesn't believe me about her problems. My husband had his family over for dinner. We had a fun time, and I went to bed. I could still hear my husband in the living room, drunk, chatting with his sister, who was basically his best friend. Our house has very thin walls. I heard them discuss my daughter, and I was just astounded. She brought up how kids don't just randomly end up that way, and that there has to have been something to make her that way. And he said how I tell him I was this good parent, but he doesn't really think that is true, because if that were true, she wouldn't have ended up that way. He said he isn't sure if I abused her or beat her or something like that. This is paraphrasing heavily. Their conversation went on for easily 20-30 minutes. It sounded like they had talked about this before. My husband said that even if I was a horrible parent, it means nothing to him because we aren't having kids. He also mentioned how no mother ever admits they are bad parents, and that he doesn't think I would ever admit to being one, but he did say that it's fucked up to mess someone up for life like that and then deny it. I was just astounded. Just to be clear, I do think something probably triggered her to end up like that. But I spent years trying to get her to open up, go to therapy, anything, and there was nothing. I made her talk to a counselor, and she didn't take it seriously at all. I have talked with my husband about those years extensively. I have even told him exactly what his sister said, that I think it came from something, I don't know what. I know my grandmother was a very cruel woman, and maybe it was just a genetic thing passed down, but I can't say. I'm just so deeply hurt by his comments that he doesn't believe me. I am his wife. We are completely honest with each other. Well, I thought we were. And yet at the same time, I don't blame him. He is completely correct that horrible mothers don't ever admit they are horrible mothers. I know I have met plenty, and I also do not blame him for ever bringing up these suspicions. Could you imagine telling your wife, "You might have been a horrible, hurtful mother?" Basically implying I am lying. Even if he does think that I was, I simply cannot blame him for not ever bringing this up to me. But it doesn't mean I am not deeply, deeply hurt by the fact that he thinks this about me. It's been one day, and I haven't brought it up. I just don't know how. For one, I eavesdropped. That is not okay. But two, it's just uncomfortable to talk about. What do I do? How do I bring this up to him? What do I even say? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I have borderline personality disorder, BPD, and it is glaringly obvious to me what she is doing. That's not to say I think she has a cluster B personality disorder. Sociopathy sounds more likely. She is presenting a mostly normal facade to your new husband because he has never seen the real her, and because he hasn't seen it, he can't believe it, and thinks you're the one causing problems because she has never shown herself to be the problem. You need to check his phone. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in contact with her, and she's telling him all these lies, and he believes her. It sounds like she's setting you up as the bad guy so he leaves you. Also, no matter what you do about your jackass husband, cut her off. I know she's your kid, but for frick's sake, we tell people not to stay in hurtful relationships, and that should include your children. She delights in tormenting you, and you keep walking right into it. Stop. She doesn't like you. She wants to take things from you because she can. Comment 2. Your daughter sounds like a malignant narcissist, and narcissism is usually correlated with trauma, like, the death of a parent at a very young age. People want to be able to blame something concrete when a kid turns out shitty, so as to distance themselves from the thought that it could happen to them. But if you actually observe people raised in the same household with the same parenting, they can have wildly different outcomes. One of my friends, a married mom with a great career, has a brother who totally failed to launch, and it wasn't because of favoritism. Same with my husband and his sister. I am garden variety, mentally ill, anxiety, and my sister has done stints inpatient. I don't know how your husband made it to almost 50 and doesn't realize that parenting isn't perfectly correlated with how a kid turns out. Except that he sounds low empathy and insight. Now, for the update, thank you for sticking with me here. So, it's been a week since I overheard that conversation between my husband and his sister. I've been stewing in my own thoughts, trying to figure out how to confront him. I didn't want to admit it, but the seed of doubt was planted. Did I do something wrong raising my daughter? I've always been so sure I hadn't, but now? Then, 2 days ago, my brother called. He's the one who's been like a father to my girl since she was a baby. He had news. He'd been doing some cleaning, found an old box of my daughter's things, and inside there was a diary. He hadn't read it, said it didn't feel right, but he thought I should have it. I was shaking when I picked it up from him. That night, I sat down and started reading. It was from her teenage years, the time when everything changed. The entries were shocking. She wrote about feeling lost, about feeling pressure to be perfect. She never mentioned me or my brother directly, but there was a lot about her dad, my first husband. She idolized him and his death. It hit her harder than I ever knew. She wrote about putting up walls, pushing people away so she wouldn't get hurt again. It was like reading the words of a stranger, not my daughter. I realized then that I had missed so much. I was there, but I wasn't really seeing her, understanding her. It was a gut punch, realizing that her cruelty might have been a shield, a way to cope with a pain she couldn't express. Yesterday, I decided it was time to talk to my husband. I found him in the garage, tinkering with his motorcycle, a hobby to clear his head. I just blurted it out, told him about the diary, about my doubts. I confessed to overhearing his conversation. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that floored me. He admitted he was wrong to talk about me like that he let his sister's opinions sway him. He apologized, said he should have come to me with his concerns. We talked for hours about my daughter, about us, about trust. It was painful, raw, but it felt like a turning point. He promised to stand by me, to help me rebuild my relationship with my daughter. And I promised to be more open, to share my fears and insecurities with him. Today I called my daughter. I told her about the diary, about how I wanted to understand her better. There was a long silence on the other end. Then she said something I never expected. She wanted to try therapy again, But this time, together. It was like a door opening after being closed for so long. I know it won't be easy. There's a lot of hurt, a lot of history, but for the first time in years, I feel hope. I feel like I'm not alone in this. My husband, he's with me, and maybe, just maybe, my daughter is too. Thank you for reading. Aita for leaving my husband after discovering his secret life and betrayals. I, 26 years old female, and my husband, 29 years old male, have been together for 5 years and married for 6 months. We had our first child a year and a half ago. When we first started our relationship, I opened up to him about my past of being bisexual and asked him if he has ever done anything with the same intimacy. He said no, and we went on about life for 5 years. This weekend, we took a family vacation, and while we were there, he started a conversation with a man he knew back when he lived in the city before we met. He told me he wanted to go for a walk around the property, which I let him go alone because I was putting our baby to bed. On this walk, he planned to meet this guy at the hotel for a quickie, but never went through with it. We get back home, and a few days later, he'd left his phone at home on his way to work. I picked up his phone to text his boss, and I saw everything. The dirty texts, pictures, even planning to meet the first week of July, which is my birthday weekend. When I brought it up to him, he begged for forgiveness, but I was so shocked I couldn't breathe. He told me that this is a part of him that he's repressed for a long time, and he thought it was gone until he was back in the city where he had those experiences. He told me that we could work on things, but I can't look at him and see the man I love anymore. He was cheated on in his last relationship, and he's always been very adamant about the fact that if I ever cheated on him, I would be kicked out. Understandably. But I'm at a crossroad one. Do I stay and try to make this work despite my perception of the man I had envisioned being completely warped after how I saw him? 2. Do I leave while I still have a chance? My dad cheated on my mom all throughout my childhood, and I vowed that I'll never let that happen to me. It would give me the chance to focus on myself and not on him and his needs and wants over mine. Can we make this work even though I personally feel like the past 5 years have been a lie? Will I ever be able to be pregnant by him again and feel the same love I did the first time? Will I be able to raise a family now, knowing that there is a potential for this again? Update 5/27. How do I even begin? You all were right. He basically did this all throughout our relationship, all while I was pregnant and 11 days after we got engaged, 2 days after our daughter's first birthday, the day of my close friend dying, the whole week prior to vacation. Timeline goes as follows. May 2019, we meet. May 2021, doublest email. November 2022, Sniffy's email, 5 days after engagement. June 2023, looks up AP sister on FB. Everything prior to that is erased. February 2024, Grindr downloaded. April 2024, burner phone searched for. Instabong and Bumble downloaded. May 2024, everything comes to a head. I'm going to confront him about divorce and have him come get his things ASAP. I'll never forgive him for putting our daughter in this position. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He said he would leave you if you cheated. You vowed you would leave him if he cheated. Yet here we are. Just follow through it. Ignore the fact it was with a man. Try to imagine the same exact situation with a woman. Would you be wondering if you should leave him? In my opinion, it's just worse that it's a man, because that means he lied to you from the beginning of your relationship. Comment 2. The best thing to do would be to see a lawyer and protect yourself and your child legally. See a doctor and get fully examined. I guarantee this wasn't the first time he's done this. Reach out to family or someone you trust for support. His sexuality is irrelevant. He's been unfaithful. He could have asked for a hall pass or something, but he chose to go behind your back. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking with me here. So I thought I had seen it all, but the past 3 months have been, well, interesting. After I decided to confront him about the divorce, things took a turn. He promised he'd change, go to therapy, do whatever it took. I wanted to believe him for our daughter's sake, but deep down I knew better. Then, one day, I got a call from the bank. Turns out, He'd taken out a second mortgage on our house without telling me. Said it was to pay for the therapy and a fresh start for us. But the bank was calling because payments were overdue. He'd gambled most of it away, chasing some insane hope that he could win enough to fix everything he'd broken. I was furious, felt betrayed all over again. But when I confronted him, he turned it around on me, said I was the one who drove him to it because I couldn't forgive him. That stung, and in a moment of weakness, I agreed to give him another chance. I thought keeping the family together was worth it, but that was my mistake. The next blow came when I found out he'd been fired from his job for inappropriate conduct. He'd been having an affair with a coworker, and when it ended, things got ugly. He never told me, just pretended to go to work every day while our savings dwindled. I was at my breaking point, but I still didn't leave. I was scared of being alone, scared for our daughter. I clung to the hope that he could change, that we could get past this. But it was like trying to hold on to sand. The harder I gripped, the faster it slipped through my fingers. Then, the final straw. I got a call from a woman claiming to be pregnant with his child. She'd seen my posts online, pieced together who I was, and decided I had a right to know. I didn't want to believe her, but the dates lined up with one of his business trips. I was done. I told him it was over, that I was filing for divorce for real this time. He begged, pleaded, said it was a one-time mistake, but I couldn't do it anymore. I was done being the fool. So I went to a lawyer, started the divorce proceedings. It was messy, with him trying to fight for custody. But in the end, I got full custody of our daughter. He got visitation rights, but I know he's not interested in being a father. He's too wrapped up in his own mess. I'm trying to rebuild now, for me and my daughter. It's hard, and some days I feel like I'm drowning. But I have to believe it'll get better. I have to believe that I made the right choice, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Thanks for reading. Aita for kicking my husband out. Then visiting him in the hospital after his accident. Update. Thanks to most of you for your supportive comments, except for shallow a-holes. For context, at the beginning my husband was calm, generous, and sweet. Some things I just chalked up to cultural differences because he was raised in India, though he left as a teenager. Also, I know my instincts are bad. Growing up, there was domestic violence at home, and I never learned how to read or trust people well. Plus, I was in therapy, and I'm still on antidepressants. That hasn't helped my weight, along with chronic health problems. I just had surgery a month ago. I still manage to exercise and eat healthy, but it hasn't made a difference. The morning after my post, I was really thinking of a quiet plan to exit. I went to the grocery store and, among other things, bought rice pudding. My husband saw it and got mad, saying it wasn't healthy. I said I can't stand him policing what I eat anymore. He's ranting, asking for his credit card back, and eventually threw a shoe at my head. I took a shower and got ready to leave, but he grabbed the baby out of my arms as I went out the door. So I went to the neighbors and called the cops. When they came, I took the baby and left for a friend's house. I came back to sleep and he was gone. All his stuff is here. I assume he's at his brother's apartment, but he hasn't said anything. My plan today is to work on resumes and job applications with the help of my best friend. I, 38-year-old female, have been married for 2 years to my husband, 35-year-old male. There were some red flags when we dated, comments he would make about women or overweight people, but he treated me kindly and respectfully, so it didn't seem like a big deal. I have had plenty of issues, but before he would try to understand when I had anxiety attacks or sleepless nights. We argued during wedding planning too, but I thought we moved past something. I had a baby a year ago and had bad postpartum depression and gained weight. And things have gotten really bad. He criticizes me daily, telling me I look like a man because I don't wear lipstick, paint my nails, and color in my eyebrows. He says people think less of him because his wife is fat. He barely parents, but loses his mind every time our toddler gets a bump and blames me for being careless. I can't take it anymore. I'm devastated. I feel broken. I was married before for 12 years, and my ex was a serial cheater. I feel like I'm unlovable, and my confidence is shot. So I'm looking for advice on an exit strategy. I'm a stay-at-home mom with experience in social work. I have to get a job, which is so hard, because I can barely function with depression right now. I also don't know how to be around my husband anymore. I'm dreading the divorce process, custody. He makes lots of money, so I could get really screwed here. At least our house is really my house I had for years before him. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. 1. It sounds like you are likely on your husband's insurance. Make eye and dental appointments and get any work you need done, as well as new glasses. Do the same for any medical issues you may have. 2. Is your car well maintained? Do you need new tires? Get that done now before you have to worry about paying for it yourself. 3. Buy what you need for your child. Will you need a bigger car seat soon? Get it now. 4. Go see a lawyer for a consultation. Also, consider seeing another one for another consultation. 5. Do you have family? If they can keep a secret, reach out to them now about having a temporary place to go after you leave him. Ask for 4 to 6 months. You may also want to consider renting out your house for an income source. 6. Can you continue to pay your mortgage on your own? 7. Set up a bank account at another bank in your name only. 8. Make a list of your assets. 9. See a therapist for your depression. If you don't like the first one, see a different one. 10. Start networking a little bit and read a few recent journal articles. Good luck. You've got this, and I wish you and your baby a better life you deserve. Comment 2. He says people think less of him because his wife is fat. In my own relationship, this was a red flag, because why is he caring about what others think instead of worrying about what his wife is going through? This is a very unhealthy mindset that unfortunately you cannot change for him. He cares more about being viewees, less in the eyes of his own wife and life partner. This exit strategy may take some time, but small steps are still steps towards peace and happiness. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around. So after I posted last time, things went from bad to worse. My husband, who had been staying at his brother's, came back unexpectedly. He walked in like nothing happened, like he didn't throw a shoe at my head or anything. He tried to act sweet, making dinner and playing with our kid. It was like he was two different people, and it made me sick to my stomach. Then, out of nowhere, he said he wanted to talk. He admitted he'd been seeing someone else. Said it was because I wasn't the woman he married, that I'd let myself go. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't even cry, I was just numb. He said he wanted to work things out for our kid's sake, but I couldn't shake the image of him with someone else. It was like my first marriage all over again. I didn't know what to do, so I called my sister. She's always been the strong one. She told me to kick him out and that I deserved better. But it's not that simple with a kid and no job. I felt trapped. My sister said she'd help me, but she's got her own problems. Her husband lost his job and they're barely making ends meet. A few days later, my husband's affair partner showed up at our house. She was yelling, saying he'd promised to leave me. I couldn't believe it. In my own home, this was happening. My husband tried to calm her down, but she was out of control. She even slapped him. The neighbors must have heard because the next thing I knew, the cops were there. They took her away, and my husband was left with a red mark on his face and a lot of explaining to do. I felt like I was in a bad dream. I wanted to wake up and have everything be okay. But it wasn't okay. It was real, and it was my life falling apart. I had to do something, anything. So I made a decision. I told my husband he had to leave. For real this time. I said I'd figure out the rest later, but I couldn't have him in the house. He didn't argue, just packed a bag and left. I spent the next week in a daze. I tried to focus on my kid, on finding a job, but it was hard. Then, my husband's brother called. He said my husband was in the hospital. He'd been in a car accident. Nothing life-threatening, but he was hurt pretty bad. My first thought was that I didn't care, that he deserved it. But then I thought about my kid, growing up without a dad, or with a dad who was messed up because of an accident. I couldn't let that happen. I went to the hospital. My husband was lying there, all bandaged up, and he looked so small and helpless. He started crying when he saw me, apologizing for everything. He said the accident made him realize what he'd been doing to me, to us. He begged for another chance. I didn't know what to feel. I was angry, hurt, but also scared. Scared of being alone, of not being able to make it on my own. I sat with him for a while, holding his hand. I didn't forgive him, not really. But I told him we'd see, that maybe we could go to counseling, try to work things out. I felt weak, desperate even. But I also felt like I had to try, for my kid's sake, if nothing else. So that's where I am now, trying to pick up the pieces of my life. Not sure if I'm doing the right thing, but I'm trying, and that's all I can do. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.